I lied for 10 years. To her. To everyone. But mostly to myself. We called it friendship because calling it love would have destroyed everything, and I was terrified of finding out she didn't feel the same. Let me be honest, we weren't just best friends. We were two cowards hiding behind a decade of inside jokes and shared apartments, praying the other wouldn't notice the way our voices softened when we said each other's name. 10 years of pretending not to be in love will rot you from the inside out. A decade of inside jokes that no one else would understand, of anniversaries only we remembered. The day we met in freshman orientation, the day we moved into our first tiny apartment, the night my car died and we laughed helplessly on the side of the road until sunrise. 10 years of best friend. That's what everyone called us. That's what we called ourselves. It was easier than saying the truth neither of us dared to name. Claire knew every version of me I had ever been. The loud one, the heartbroken one, the quiet one who pretended she didn't still stalk her ex's Instagram at 2 a.m. She noticed everything no one else bothered to see. The smile that didn't reach my eyes, the laugh that rang a little too high when I was lying. And I knew her rhythms like my own breathing. The little hums she made while cooking, the way she tied her hair up when she was thinking, how she refused mirrors on bad days and lingered in front of them on good ones, searching for a version of herself she believed. Tell me, does that sound like just friendship to you? Because that's what we called it. We built an entire life on that lie. Wanting more than what we had meant gambling everything we already did. And losing her terrified me more than being lonely ever had. So we lived in that dangerous middle place, where her hand brushed mine by accident, where hugs lasted half a heartbeat too long, where we said I love you in every language except the one that counted. Neither of us crossed the line. Not until the night everything cracked open. It was late, the city asleep, the two of us on the living room floor, surrounded by takeout boxes and the chaos of unpacked memories. We were digging through old photos for her mom's birthday present. 10 years of snapshots scattered between us like small, incriminating confessions. There we were at 20, soaked from the rain and laughing. At 23, covered in paint after redecorating the living room. At 27, forehead pressed to forehead like it was the most natural thing in the world. I hadn't realized how often we were touching in those pictures. I hadn't realized how obvious it looked from the outside. Claire held one photo longer than the rest, the one where my arm was around her waist and her head rested against my shoulder, sunburned and smiling like we belonged there. Her voice was quiet when she finally spoke. Do you ever feel like we're pretending not to notice something? My heart stuttered. I tried to laugh it off. You're getting philosophical on leftover noodles. But she didn't laugh. She looked straight at me. I'm serious. The air shifted, thick, electric, unavoidably honest. I don't want to keep pretending, she said softly, if you see it too. Fear crawled up my throat. 10 years balanced on a fragile thread. 10 years of comfort and routine and breakfasts and birthdays and every tiny ordinary thing that secretly meant everything. What if I'm wrong? I whispered. What if I ruin us? Her fingers slid into mine. You could never ruin us. We were both shaking, both terrified, both unbelievably relieved. I've been in love with you for years, she confessed, voice breaking on the last word like she'd been holding it in her mouth too long. The world went quiet, not empty, but full. I have too, I said. It was the easiest, hardest thing I've ever done. We stared at each other, both stunned by how simple the truth sounded when it wasn't hiding anymore. Then I leaned in. I leaned forward and kissed her. It wasn't dramatic. No fireworks, no swelling music, no cinematic spin. It was better than that. It was soft and terrifying and inevitable. Her lips were warm and hesitant at first, like she was asking a question she'd rehearsed 1,000 times in her head but never dared to speak aloud. I could feel the tremor in her breath, the careful way she leaned in, as if afraid I might disappear if she touched me too quickly. The world didn't explode, it narrowed, to the faint taste of mint and tea, to the gentle press and retreat, to the way her hand slid up to my jaw, thumb brushing my cheek like she was memorizing me by touch. I leaned closer and the hesitation broke, not into urgency, but into certainty, that quiet, anchoring sense of finally being where I'd been heading all along. 10 years of swallowed confessions and redirected glances poured into one impossibly gentle kiss. Every goodnight, every almost told truth finally found its place. She kissed me back like she had been holding her breath for a decade and had finally decided to live. When we finally parted, we didn't go far, just enough to breathe. Our foreheads rested together, noses brushing, both of us laughing under our breath in disbelief, in relief, in something that felt dangerously close to joy. "So," she whispered, smiling, "we were both idiots." "Complete idiots," I agreed, and I had never been happier to be wrong about anything in my life. The fear didn't vanish. It softened, changed shape, became something new. Not the fear of losing her, but the fear of loving her badly, of not deserving the way she was smiling at me like the sun had finally risen. We didn't rush. We didn't need to. We sat there on the floor, fingers tangled together, surrounded by all the versions of us we had been. Best friends, almost, not quite, nearly, and quietly began to imagine the versions we hadn't dared to be. 2 girls, 10 years, not pretending anymore. And for the first time, the silence between us wasn't full of things unsaid. It was full of everything we had finally found the courage to say. Not in speeches, not in dramatic declarations, but in the small, trembling ways our bodies leaned toward each other, like plants finally allowed to turn toward the sun. Her thumb kept tracing circles over the back of my hand, absent-minded and reverent at the same time, like she was relearning the texture of something she'd already known by heart for years. I realized my hand wasn't just holding hers, it was clinging, like some part of me believed that if I let go, I'd wake up and find this was just another almost moment we'd pretend never happened. She let out a breath that sounded like it had been trapped in her ribs for a decade. "I used to rehearse this," she said quietly, "in the shower, on the bus, before falling asleep. I'd imagine telling you everything and then imagine you laughing or apologizing or leaving. I used to rehearse staying quiet, convincing myself that friendship was enough, that I should be grateful, that wanting more made me selfish." She winced gently. "It didn't." "I know that now," I said. "I just wish I'd known it sooner." Her eyes softened. "We got here. That's all that matters." The fear hadn't vanished. It had changed texture, less like something chasing us and more like something we were carrying together, careful but unashamed. Not the fear of losing her anymore, but the fragile, earnest fear of wanting to do this right, of wanting to be worthy of the softness she was offering me. "We're really doing this?" she asked. A small laugh caught in her throat. "We're really doing this," I said. The words didn't echo. They landed. Solid. True. time went strange after that. Slower, thicker, as if the room itself understood that something important was happening and didn't want to rush it. The walls, the photographs, the half-open boxes, the fading city noise outside, it all blurred into background. What stayed sharp was her. The warmth of her shoulder pressed against mine, the way her hair brushed my cheek when she turned toward me, the quiet steadiness in her eyes, like she was finally home. She leaned her forehead against mine again. No urgency, just closeness. Our breaths synced without trying. "We're going to mess this up sometimes," she murmured. "We're going to say the wrong thing, or be scared, or overthink everything." "I already overthink everything," I said, smiling by myself. She smiled back. "Yeah, I know. But," she continued, "I don't want perfect. I want you. I want us, even when it's scary, especially when it's scary." The words settled into me slowly, like warmth soaking into cold hands. For so long, I had braced for loss, expecting the people I loved to leave like storms passing through. To be chosen, actively, deliberately, felt almost unreal. "I choose you," I said, the sentence surprising me even as I spoke it, because it wasn't rehearsed or polished or safe. "I choose you." She closed her eyes, and for a moment, she didn't speak at all. When she opened them again, they were shining in the soft light. "Then stay," she whispered. "Not just in the same apartment. Stay with me." We didn't rush into another kiss. We didn't need to. We just sat there and let the truth settle between us like dust in sunlight, visible now that we were finally willing to look at it. Eventually, she stood and tugged me gently to my feet. The room looked different, though nothing had moved. The photographs weren't just memories anymore. They were proof that we had already built a life together long before we had the language for what it really was. We turned off the lamp. Darkness filled the room, but it didn't feel like absence. It felt like rest. 10 years of pretending had finally run out of places to hide. As we walked down the hallway hand in hand, I realized I wasn't stepping off a cliff. I wasn't falling. I was arriving in the life we had both been quietly building around each other from the very beginning, too afraid to name it, too stubborn to let it go. This wasn't a new story starting. It was the same story, finally told out loud. And for the first time in years, the future didn't feel like something I had to brace myself against. It felt like something we would meet together. Her hand tightened around mine. "Ready?" she asked. I smiled. "I already am."